Hi and welcome to today's episode, which is all about taking two delicious vegan things and making them into pie. I like keeping a few packets of this vegan cheese sauce mix. It's like a powder that you add milk to, and then you've got kind of macaroni and cheese sauce. I whizzed up a batch a couple of weeks ago, but made more than I wanted to eat at the time. But then I noticed when the leftovers had gone cold, they set firm, I guess because of the stuff that's in the sauce mix. As I was looking at it and thinking how I was going to heat that back up again, my brain, as it's often wont to do, thought, oh, that could make a nice pie filling. So that's what we're doing today. There's a dish I used to like eating in Greece. I want to say pastitsio. I will correct myself on screen if I'm wrong. And it's like a pie made out of macaroni. And then there's some other bits and pieces in there. So it's going to be a little bit of a riff on that. For the crust of the pie, I'm going to try and use cheesy polenta just to see if it works. No idea if this is going to be a success or not. We've also got a Shadow with us. Shadow! Oh, you're so beautiful. Here he is, sitting next to his new water fountain. Hey, are you okay, buddy? Oh, yes. I made the cheesy polenta in the exact same way as I always do. So if you've subscribed to the channel for a while, you'll be familiar with how to do it. If you're not, subscribe now and then you won't miss out. This is 200 grams of dried polenta, 300 mils of oat milk, and then 500 mils of water. Brought it to a boil and then added 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast, a few tablespoons of vegan margarine, probably 5-6 tablespoons. Once the marg had melted into the liquid, I then sprinkled the polenta in through my fingers, just helps avoid clumping. Give it a really good stir and then put the lid on because it will start spattering up and it hurts if it hits you in the face. Give it like a minute or so and then lift the lid and then start stirring it because it's going to start sticking on the bottom. Cook your polenta to whatever your instructions say, because mine cooks really quickly, whereas I've seen some recipes where it says cook it for 15-20 minutes. So I guess it just depends on the brand. I've got my oven preheating at 200 degrees C, which is about 400 Fahrenheit. And then I'm going to use this pie tin. It's got all these little holes in it that help get it crispy. I've put these strips of baking paper in there to make it easy to lift out. I guess I'm just going to start packing it in the tin and seeing if I can build it up the sides without it collapsing. So I've let the polenta cool down completely. As it cools, a skin will form on the top of the polenta, so just keep stirring it, keep it moving, and then the skin will melt back into the rest of it. Initially I covered it with cling film, but I noticed the steam was getting trapped and then it was just getting covered in water. So I poured all of that away and then just left it open to the air. I'm just wondering whether it's gonna cause problems with the holes. We'll find out. So what I'm gonna do is blob it in and then start working it up and around. I'm not worried about the base of it, it's the sides that I'm just a bit concerned that it might sort of melt back into it. I don't know. That's why I've got the oven quite high. Just hopefully that will set the top layer of it, which will give it a little bit of structure. And start coming up the sides. It's a bit like plastering, I suppose, or spackling if you're in the US. Oh, and I forgot to say, after the polenta was cooked through, I stirred in 100 grams of grated vegan cheese. I went for a smoked cheese in the crust, just to really give it a nice deep flavour on the outside. Focusing my attention on the sides for now, because then I can go back in, and sort that bit out. I just want to get it fairly consistent. I don't have the patience to get this neat as a pin. So it's probably going to be quite a rustic thing. For me, it's all about the flavour. That's the important part. Using silicone on polenta, it works really well because it doesn't stick at all, whereas a wooden spoon, it will stick to that. That's on the middle shelf of the oven. And I'm going to start cooking the macaroni because the mac and cheese can just sit in the pan covered and it'll be fine. So I'll just get the water on for that. I've done like 240 grams, which is probably 2 cups. This is going to depend on the size of your pie tin, whether you want any leftovers, all of that kind of thing. So yeah, just do however much you want. Let's have a peek through the door of the oven, see what's happening. Oh no, yeah, it's all slumped. I had thought about chilling it first, maybe I should have done that. I'm gonna push everything down and then that'll just be a base. Maybe chilling it after you've packed it into the tin, because then the outside of it, that might bake before it slumps, if that makes sense. It'll crisp before the sides slump. So I'm going to try and get a crisp on the top bit here, just to have a bit of texture and a bit of a barrier so that the wet macaroni doesn't just mingle with the corn. I had initially thought I should put it on a baking tray, but thought no, because that's going to block the heat from underneath. But it's made a right mess inside the oven. So definitely put it on a baking sheet if yours has got holes in it. Macaroni's done. So I'm just going to drain this off. Everything's going a little bit wrong today. I air fried some vegan bacon. It's gone very hard. But I'm going to mix this into the mac and cheese. So I think the liquid from the cheese sauce should soften it back up. And it's just for a bit of flavour as well. So it was like 4 rashers of smoky vegan bacon. I think what went wrong is that I left them in the air fryer after they'd finished cooking. So I guess the heat in there has just dried them out, but it should be fine. Broken that down into little pieces. I've measured out 250 mils of oat milk. I'm going to whisk the cheese sauce mixture into that. The thickeners in here are predominantly wheat flour and corn flour. So stick around at the end because I'm just turning over some ideas of how to replicate the similar sort of thing. So I'm just going to pop that in. I'm also going to put in a couple of tablespoons of nutritional yeast just to boost up the cheesiness. If you've watched the kitchen utensils video that I did recently, I like using this in there because it's quite small, but it's very effective because you've got lots of little bands of metal. So it's good in a small container. And then I've got the big pan back on the heat. Pour that in. Now that it's thickened, I've turned the heat off. I'm going to mix in some cheese, like 100 grams. This is just sort of a mature cheddar style rather than the smoky. That's the one I used. It's got really, really good taste and texture to it. It's very brittle, very crumbly, but it tastes amazing. So in with the bacon. More bacon would have been better, but I didn't have the energy to go to the shop. I'm gonna drop the macaroni in. I might not do it all at once. Perfect. And I'll check the flavour quickly, see if I want any salt or anything in. No, that's good for me because the bacon's salty, the cheese is salty, and I cooked the macaroni in salty water. Add any seasonings in there if you want some in. I'll whip the base out, see what that's doing. So yeah, it's crisping up nicely, but I think it needs another 10-15 minutes because I want all of it to be like this. So yeah, 10-15 minutes more. I'm going to sort of sandwich the mac and cheese with some other bits just for some extra flavour. Caramelised 2 medium-sized white onions. To do the onions, I just split them in half, peeled them, and then ran them through the mandolin to get thin half-moon slices. Put them in a pan with some oil, sprinkle of salt on there. That helps pull the moisture out so it caramelises faster. Fried it off for 7 minutes or so until they start browning. Once everything was nice and soft and was going nice and golden, I then added in about a teaspoon, maybe a couple teaspoons of light brown soft sugar and maybe a teaspoon, 2 teaspoons of apple cider vinegar. And that just helps sweeten it up, but also give it a bit of tanginess so it's not just sweetness. And it kind of helps make it really sticky and delicious. If I'd cooked it out longer and put in more liquid and sugar, that's how you make onion marmalade. So it's a really nice thing for sandwiches. So I'm going to spread a layer of this on the bottom, on top of the polenta. And then this is a 400 gram tin of chopped tomatoes that I've spiced up and cooked down. Poured the can of chopped tomatoes into a pan, added about a tablespoon of tomato puree, 1/4 teaspoon of Old Bay seasoning. So it's this stuff, it's like a blend of spices. It's got a really nice kind of, a bit of heat, but then some really tangy, bright flavours that are just very tasty. 1/2 tablespoon to a tablespoon of barbecue sauce. And then I did a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder. The Old Bay has got salt and pepper in, so I didn't need any extra seasoning or anything. And then I just cooked that down. Initially I did it in it's a milk pan, they call it, because it's quite steep-sided. But it was taking forever to reduce, so I just put it all into this pan, just to make it a bit faster. Once it had reduced to the point I wanted it was still quite chunky, like the big pieces of tomato. So I just went in with a potato masher, because I don't want it completely smooth. I wanted a little bit of texture in there. Couldn't be bothered getting the blender in. Potato masher worked really well. So it'll be onions, mac and cheese, tomato, mac and cheese, and then I'm going to show you how to make pan grattata, which is a poor man's parmesan, as they call it. And we'll get on and make that now. I've got 60 grams of panko here. It's about 2 cups or so. These are Japanese breadcrumbs and they're very crisp and very light. I did it on the outside of the tofu Kievs. I'll stick a link in the description. I really love the texture of them. I've just looked on the packet and they're made with wheat flour and wheat starch. So I wonder if it's the starch, like the extra starch, that gets them so crisp. Then I've got a teaspoon of very finely chopped fresh rosemary, and I'm going to crush a couple of garlic cloves into that. I've been heating up some olive oil in the pan, so let's go over and we'll fry off the breadcrumbs. There's the base, so it's all crisp. So I'm just going to let that cool down. Throw the rosemary and the garlic into the pan. It's on a medium heat, not too high. So let that cook 30 seconds or so, and then add the breadcrumbs. I'm just stirring it to get everything coated in a bit of oil, and then I'll just fry that off until golden. I'm gonna add a little bit of salt and pepper to the pan, just do it to taste. But I'll do like, I don't know, 1/4 teaspoon or so of each, maybe 1/2 teaspoon, something like that. So the purpose of the pan grattata is to give a nice bit of extra flavour with the rosemary and garlic, but also some texture. So you probably want to be frying it 10 minutes tops, something like that. So I've turned it down to 5. Mine goes up to 9. You need to be careful you don't burn it, otherwise you have to chuck the lot away and start again. So just keep it moving. I'm going to turn the heat off now, but I'll just leave the pan on there and keep stirring it, and the residual heat will just finish the last bits off. I'm going to let the polenta base cool down for a bit, just so it's not quite as liquid, and the cats are demanding their dinner. So I'll finish frying the pan grattata, and then we'll pick it back up and start assembling. Cats are fed and polenta is cool, so it's time to start assembling. As I feared, doing it in a holy tin did cause problems. All of those little worm guys that squirted out the side, they became hard. So then when I tried to lift the strips, everything was kind of sticking. So in the end, I inverted it onto the baking tray. I crinkled up a sheet of baking paper because that makes it easier to fit in the tin. Put the tray on top, flipped it over, put the paper on, and then put the tin on, flipped everything back over. I feared that it would just be a nightmare trying to get the whole thing out once I've assembled the pie, tart, macaroni mess. So let's start putting things in here. And then I'm going to let everything completely cool, and then I'll put the pan grattata on, because otherwise that's just going to go soft. It's in a layer like that, so that's going to be a nice little base. Go in with the onions and scatter those about. Got a fairly even layer of the onions there. So I'm just going to pack those down flat. Got a spatula with the cranked handle, just makes it easier to get in there without your fingers scraping over everything. With the onions, what you can do is make up a massive jar of it and then just keep that in the fridge. Keep for a good, at least a week, more if you put more sugar and vinegar in. And then you can make sauces out of it and that kind of thing. So it's a nice little thing to have on hand. Dollop in the mac and cheese mixture, so I'll do about half. And you want to kind of get it packed in there tightly enough so that the sauce that surrounds each piece, it kind of bonds everything together into a solid cake. That's all packed in nice and evenly and fairly flat. Tomato time. So I'll blob some on, and then we'll do the rest of the macaroni. I'm going to tuck this into the fridge, let it cool down and set, and then depending on what time it is, we'll either do some eating tonight or we'll pick it back up and try it tomorrow. It's high time that we had some pie. Oh, let's get stuck into this. It's the following day. I decided to let everything cool down in the fridge overnight just so it's definitely nice and set. I was also really tired by the time I got done with another video. Went straight into making pasta chips out of the leftover macaroni. They worked amazingly. What a great little snack that is. And it's equivalent of pennies, I would have thought. Definitely be making that again. I'll link to that in the description for if you want to make them yourself. So it's time to hopefully get this out of the tin and then slice it up and give it a try and see what we've achieved. So it's come out at least. That's something. That's a good sign. Yum. Yes, 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 yes. I've topped it with some of the pan grattata crumbs that we made yesterday. I wanted a little bit fattier, so I melted some butter in the microwave, like half a tablespoon, something like that, mixed in a cup, like a tablespoon or two of the crumbs, and then added some vegan parmesan. It's the same one that I made for the polenta crisps. I'll stick the link down to that if you want to make it yourself. It's just cashews, nooch, onion, garlic, bit of MSG, bit of salt. Yeah, tastes just like Parmesan cheese. It's amazing. I'm planning on eating it cold, so it's going to be a great one for picnics and that kind of thing. I don't know how well that's going to heat up. I heated that bit of polenta that I had left over that I put in a container. I heated that up for dinner and it just liquefied again. Not liquid, but it just went wet again. So yeah, I don't think it's going to be one for eating hot, but you can try it, who knows. So I can pick it up nicely, it doesn't collapse, but I'm not going to tempt fate too much. Those flavours are incredible together. There's lots of really great textures in there as well. So the crumb gives it a nice bit of crisp crunchiness. The polenta's got like a firm chew to it. It's not chewy, don't get me wrong, but it's, something for your back teeth to work on. And then obviously the macaroni's got a nice bit of bite. Then the onions have got a soft kind of, different kind of crunch to them. But then the flavours as well. Oh, like cheese and onions are a great combination. Tomato and cheese is a great combination, and tomato and onion, great combination. They're just working together fantastically well. It feels nice and light as well, like it's not going to sit really heavy in your stomach. So it'll be a really good one for work. So you could make it on like a Sunday and take portions with you throughout the week. This is also going to be really nicely with different kind of condiment type things on the side. A friend of mine foraged some wild garlic and she gave me a big bunch of it. So I blitzed it down with olive oil, salt, pepper, and some of the vegan parmesan. And it makes a cracking pesto. It's got a slap to it. It's like wasabi. It's that kind of like nose clearing properties, but the flavor's incredible. So that's going to go amazing with this. Same for the olive tapenades. It'll work really, really nicely with that. The spinach and feta dip and actually the roast garlic and bean dip, that'll both go really nicely with that because they've got flavors there. But again, subtle, not subtle, but not overwhelming. So I think it's going to balance very nicely with something like that. If you wanted to have something like that for dinner, wanted to make it into a bigger meal, you could do some salads. Maybe, you know, now that we're getting into warmer weather, you could start doing things like the watermelon and feta, even the rainbow slaw that I made with the pulled jackfruit, because I use grapefruit in that one. Yeah, that flavour would go really good with that, especially with the Old Bay. It's going to really boost up that Old Bay zinginess. At some point soon, I'm going to show you how to make a celeriac remoulade, and I think that would go really, really nicely with that. Celeriac's like a really big round root vegetable. The flavour's a little bit like celery because it's kind of the root that celery grows up from. What you can do with the celeriac is shave off the skin, and then you can either use a speed peeler to do like fat ribbons of it, or use a julienne peeler and then you can do fine ribbons of it, like a coleslaw kind of thing. And then some of the vegan mayo, I'll stick the link to that in the description. Mix in a little bit of mustard. You can either do grain mustard or Dijon. That'd be really good. You could even do some Granny Smith apple, some shreds of that or ribbons of that in there. Yes. But I'll show you how to make the remoulade in a couple of months or so once the weather warms up, because it's still Baltic. The house is 13 degrees C at the moment, and I'm really trying not to put the heating on because energy bills are just ridiculous at the moment. If you can't get a hold of like a powdered plant-based cheese mix, this is, let's have a look. So this is 35 grams and the bulk of it seems to be, it's not showing me the percentages unfortunately, but it's fortified wheat flour, maltodextrin and corn flour. And then the rest are flavorings and stabilizers. You could try something like a tablespoon of plain flour and a tablespoon of corn flour, and then do things like onion and garlic powder, nutritional yeast, bit of salt, perhaps a touch of white pepper if you like that kind of thing. And then the 250 mils of oat milk. That should bring you close to what this is. Alternatively, you could also try doing that with oats. So I put oats, just cheapo oats, you know, like the bargain basics things. Put them in the coffee grinder so it's very fine. And then that makes a great sauce. So I've done that a couple of times. I did it for the leek and potato gratin and also the winter warmer pie. I'll stick links to that in the description as well. You could try doing just flour on its own. So, you know, like a bechamel, that kind of sauce. I've seen jars of cheese sauce and I've used one of them myself. I don't know if it's going to set in that same way, you know, if it's going to set firm like this has. Might be worth a shot though, because even if it doesn't set, it's still going to taste great. So it's, yeah, maybe worth a go. At some point I'll try and make up a batch of this from scratch just to see, you know, just in case people can't find this kind of thing. This is from Sainsbury's if you're in the UK, their Plant Pioneers range. I think they're 50 pence, something like that. So it's a nice little thing to have, you know, for emergencies, that kind of thing. You can get really creative with doing different variations in this. So I reckon a layer of the soft taco mixture, that would be amazing in there. You can make it deeper. You could do it in like a cake tin and then start putting loads of different layers of amazing, delicious things all together. You could even do a layer of tapenade, a layer of like a sun-dried tomato paste. Yeah. I'm drooling. Yeah, so there's lots of variations. You could do barbecue jackfruit, you know, like pulled jackfruit. I'll stick, you know, the link for the rainbow slaw. That's the jackfruit one. I added the cheese into the cheese sauce mix because it's not so cheesy. It doesn't taste brilliantly cheesy. So I always add more in to get, you know, to boost the flavor up. So if you didn't want the pure cheese flavor, just leave that extra cheese out. And then, you know, you've got more of a bland canvas to start adding different bits in with it. If you want more plant-based recipes and all things cooking related delivered fresh into your inbox every week, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. While you're waiting for the next one, have a look at this.